Today in our presentation, just like our previous webinars, we're mainly going to have demos. But before we have our demos, I'm going to start with positioning Power View in the Power BI family. Power BI family has 5 family members today. Power Query to get the data you want and transform it into what you need. Power Pivot to combine all the data in a model so you can use it later on. This is the heart or the brain of the Power BI family. And Power View, the primary visualization tool that we're going to talk about today. Power Map, also a visualization tool, but specifically for geographical data. And Power BI Q&A, where we can have Google-like abilities to look for data, and Power BI Q&A will present you this data in a visualization they think is best suited for your question. Of course, all these Power BI family members are related, and in this small chart we see how the relationships exist between the Power BI family members. Normally we start off with Power Query to collect and structure the data we want. And then we bring all the data together in a model using Power Pivot. And here we also can add calculations that can give you more insight into data. And then finally, to bring the data to your end user, we have several options. The traditional pivot tables or charts in Excel, nothing wrong with those. They're very powerful and provide a lot of options. But you can use Power BI specific options like Power View, where you can have more interaction between your charts. So this is probably better suited for dashboards than your traditional pivot tables or charts in Excel. The Power BI Q&A, as I mentioned before, it's Google-like interface. And finally, Power Map for fancy geographical visualizations. Today we talk about Power View, and we're going to jump right in. I only have this slide about Power View because we're just talking about interactive charts and graphs and how to explore data, and I'm going to show you some of the options we have regarding interactivity. There are a couple of versions of Power View, and they are different. So if you're using Excel 2010, there might be some differences to what I'm showing you because I'm showing the demos in Excel 2013. Power View is also available on SharePoint, and again, there are some differences between the Excel version and the SharePoint version. If you have questions regarding what is possible in the SharePoint version or the Excel 2010 version, it's probably best to ask afterwards through mail, because depending on your specific question, I also probably have to look it up. That's it for introduction, and we're going to jump right in, and I hope you're ready for a bunch of demos. I hope everybody can see my screen. I have an empty Excel sheet here, and when you open an Excel sheet, you can see Power Pivot in the top of your ribbon and Power Query on top of your ribbon if you have them installed, but no Power View. If you want to start with Power View, you have to go to Insert and click Power View, and then you can start working with it. At the side, we have the fields that you can use with your Power View dashboards. The data we're going to work with today is data concerning the Olympics. I've created a Power Pivot model with calculations and other enhancements, so I can give you the best demo possible for Power View. I'm not gonna show you the model that's behind it. That's something we probably gonna see in a future webinar. So for now, let's jump right in. First thing I want to show you is how easy it is to use a map visualization, because you don't have to use Power Map to get a map visualization. For example, if we have the city for the hosts of the Olympic Games, we get a list of the cities, and we want to know how many medals were handed out during those events. We get the table similar to what we know in pivot tables in Excel. But now it's very easy to switch to the map view, and he automatically does this. We get to see bubbles depending on where the organization was and how many medals were handed out. And the size of the bubbles also has meaning, because the bigger the bubble, the more medals were handed out. There is one thing that's interesting to know, I can tell you already beforehand. The dataset is not only Summer Olympics, but also Winter Olympics. So if I add the season to our map, we see that there is a difference in size between the Summer Olympics, which are the blue bubbles, and the Winter Olympics, which are the red bubbles. And we can zoom in or zoom out in the map as we please. If we want to have more information about the medals that were handed out, that's very simple. We can add a new table, and if we don't click anywhere, we get a complete list of all the winners of the medals ever. But if we click, for example, here, the list here of the medal winners is limited to the organization in Sarajevo. The reason I'm also doing this is, with a visual representation, some things become obvious, and maybe look at a table, it's not that obvious. For example, London and also Antwerp, they have a blue and a small red part in their pie chart. And that is because in the beginning, the Olympic Games, there was no distinction between summer and winter games. So, for example, ice hockey and skating was organized during the summer games. So you see how easy it is to find anomalies using the visual capabilities of Power View. Let me add a new board to show you some of the interactive options. Medals, I'm going to use the region and the medal count. So we see immediately that Afghanistan only has 1 medal and Australia about 1,000 medals. So that's nice to see, but this is maybe more interesting to see in a map than the host cities and the number of medals there, because here we see how many medals have been won by every country. And again, we see America won a large part of the medals, Australia also a bigger part. And this is actually the minimum size, so we can go smaller than this, because otherwise we wouldn't see the bubbles. We can add some extra information to the bubbles, just like we've done in our first dashboard, where I had the pie chart summer, winter. I can also add the medal. And now we can see that we have information about gold, silver and bronze medals won by that country. So Iceland, for example, only won 1 silver medal. this is already something we can work with, but it's possible to add some slicers to divide our information. One of the interesting slices is probably just like we did in our first demo, season. I drag season on there, creates a new table, and it's possible to use this table to slice the information here just by clicking slicer, and now it's converted from a table to a slicer. If I click now on winter, we only see the medals won during winter games. Click on summer, we only see the medals won during summer games. And of course we can also select both if the need arises. Let's keep it at winter for the time being. The other thing we can also add is sports. At the same dashboard, add a list of sports, add the medal count, and let's change this table because I don't like to have a lot of tables. I prefer other visualizations, to a clustered bar. And now we can start to play around, because Russia won 54 gold medals, and those gold medals were some skiing, bobsleigh. We see a small blue part, but the interactivity in this demo is not working very well in the direction from the map to the chart, because it doesn't give a lot of information. But the other way around, it's more interesting, because I can click skating, skiing, biathlon, bobsleigh, and you can see which countries have won medals in this particular sport. So ice hockey, typically only a couple of countries in the world that are dividing the medals. Another way of interactivity is if I click here summer, it also has an effect on the sports, of course, because everything on this board is interactive with each other as long as they are linked to the same information source, to the same measure. Let me add a new board again, where I'm going to show you another way of working interactive. I'm gonna start with the year, and I'm going to have the distinct count, and then the event sports. Okay, so now we get a list of how. Okay, we have in total we have 29 Olympics organized in the past, and in this table we see how often a sport has been present at an Olympic organization. So Taekwondo only 3 times, wrestling 24 times, gymnastics 25 times. So that's something we can work with. There's one thing at the top, we see there's an empty value here, and that's our total. And I can choose to eliminate it on my dashboard. Say I want to see all sports except the blanks. And we see immediately it takes effect in my table. But as I mentioned before, I'm not a big fan of these table visualizations, so I'm gonna use another chart, and I'm gonna use a pie chart. People who have been working with pie charts know there is one big danger when you're working with pie charts, that they're impossible to understand. I mean, there are too many options here and you can't draw any conclusions from this pie chart. It is possible, however, well, maybe, if we limit the sports by only selecting the sports that are organized in the Winter Olympics. We get a smaller list and we get a better idea of the division that's going on over the sports. The thing is, with this pie chart, okay, we see skating is organized 22 times, the luge is organized 12 times, ice hockey 21 times, curling 3 times, but there's not much more we can do with this. Unless we are using, instead of sports, we're going to remove these fields. We are using a hierarchy I created up front. So if you have a model, it's possible to create hierarchies. And I've created a hierarchy: sport, discipline, and event. I'm going to use this for my color. And at first look, we get the same result. But there is one additional option we have now. Skiing, for example. If I double click, I get a drill down of whatever is underneath the skiing sport, and we get a list of disciplines in skiing. And we can go even further to the events that are under the discipline of alpine skiing. There's one more thing I want to show you, one more option of adding information to your pie chart. We can go up again, of course, and that is the slices here, the slices option. And add gender to slices, and we see that, I hope you can see it at least, we have some white lines in our field. So if I select skiing, it's that big part, but it's divided into 2. Skating is even divided into 3. Why? We have women, men, and both, because some skating numbers are mixed. So that's something I want to show you. We can add some extra information in a separate table I've provided here. Population. Add country name and the population of that country. I'm gonna limit the list here because I don't want to see all countries. So the demo Austria, probably have some medals. Belgium, who knows? Canada also probably has some medals, and Chile, probably not, but we'll see. Okay, I'm gonna change it to a bar chart again. Because by changing it to a bar chart, now I can click here and our pie chart will automatically change its information. So what can we see now? Because for Belgium, for example, it's maybe the easiest way to look at the data. We see that skating has been organized 22 times, and during 2 events, Belgium has won a medal. I didn't know it. So Canada has had more success in the Winter Olympics, especially in ice hockey for women. They've had a medal every time. So this is an interesting visualization and interactivity between separate charts. Since we're talking about genders in the Olympics, I want to add another demo regarding gender. We have the gender, the events. We can change this to distinct count. And I want to change the visualization. I'm going to change it to a pie chart. Okay. For the female viewers of the webinar, I hope you're not happy because we're seeing here that only about a quarter of the events is organized for women and not 50% like I would expect. But of course this is over all the organizations since 1900, and maybe there's an evolution. We have year here. And by adding year as a vertical multiple, we can see a evolution. We can change some things about the layout. For example, I don't want to see a legend anymore, and I want to have a grid of 6 by 6. And like this, we have an easy overview of the evolution of events organized by gender. So you can see in the beginning, it's almost only organized for men in 1900, and in 2008 we're getting to equality, but not there yet. We can also in a horizontal multiple, but the thing is, in a horizontal multiple we only have a grid height of 1, and we would have to scroll like that to get an idea of whatever is going on. Okay. A new dashboard to show you something about the filtering. You've already seen filtering in a couple of the demos I've shown before. I filtered on sport, I filtered on the season in a previous demo, but I only did it by checking or unchecking certain elements. The filters are to provide you with more options than that. Let me see how I can provide you with a good demo. Use the medal count and country. As before, I'm gonna use stacked column chart. Thing is, we have two fields, country, region, and medal count. And we see here we have a medal count and we have a slicer, which is pretty visual to determine our set of values. So here we're saying larger than 2,500 or about. We only have 3 countries that meet this filter. If we drop it down to about 200, we see there are a lot more countries that have one more than 200 medals. If you want to add information, also possible of course. Add the medal. Because it's a stacked chart, we can easily do it. Now, this is the default way of giving you the option to filter, but there are some advanced ways where you can say contains, for example, a UY filter, and we only get countries which contain a U in their name. And if you're not happy with a certain visualization, you just switch to whatever you want and you get this. Okay, now the most used visualization in my experience is a line chart. So it's impossible to give a demo about Power View without line charts. I'm gonna do a small one here, again with year and but we want to have actual years and the medal count. Most easy one to work with. Transform it to a line chart and we get this bizarre looking line. probably, thing is, up to here, winter games and summer games were organized in the same year. Afterwards, they were organized in separate years. So, what we can do is use the season as a horizontal multiple. So, season to horizontal multiple. And then we get two line charts next to each other, and they both make more sense than the first chart where we didn't have the division between summer and winter. We can even add more information, for example, by adding a vertical multiple country by country. And then we can see that, I don't know, looking for a country with some interesting. Okay, Australia has pretty much always won something at the Summer Olympics and only in recent history started to win some medals at the Winter Olympics. Austria, on the other hand, pretty consistent, winning something at the Summer Olympics and also has a long history winning medals at the Winter Olympics. So again, using multiples can be a very powerful tool in Power View. My last two demos are to show you some of the visual possibilities with Power View. So we're going to start with a very simple table. Discipline, what else? This one. List of disciplines. We have a distinct count of editions. I'm going to use a medal count again, of course. Most obvious value to keep on using. And the countries. But instead of the actual values, I'm going to use the distinct count. So now we have alpine skiing present at 17 editions. 373 medals have been handed out to 24 different countries. Nice, okay, so we have the information we want, but it's visually not as attractive as I was hoping. Luckily, Power View has the option to change a table to a card. If we do this, we get something that's a little bit more visually attractive, not perfect yet, but something I prefer to the normal table. There is something we can add, and that is, I have to enable the content, images. So it's not possible with Excel, for example, but the default pivot tables, I mean. But in Power View, you can add pictures just like that in your reports. I'm gonna move it a little bit. Thing is, we see here alpine skiing, okay, at 17 editions, number of medals, number of countries. But what I probably want to know, or what is more interesting, is to see how this evolves over time. So again, I'm going to use year as a slicer, and he created something like this, where we can click on the years and see how many medals were handed out to how many countries. If we working year by year, the distinct count of edition doesn't make a lot of sense, so I'll remove it. There is something that I would like to see here, however, and that is some information about the host. Okay, I don't know if you mentioned, if you saw what I just did, but default Power View fields only show you the active field. So if you're missing some tables, just switch to all, and then you see all your tables again. So host, I can drag a field into this area, and it is using the same filter of year. So that's nice. So I'm not only going to add city, I'm also going to add the season. Oh, here. I'm also going to add country and the flag. Alright, and again here we start seeing the flags, which is all what we want. There is one thing, this default table visualization isn't what I really prefer, so I'm going again to the cards option. Still isn't what I want. In the card style, you have two options: the default card we've used so far, and the callout. Callout is looking like this. And this is something I would like to see if I want to have a dashboard about the medal counts, sport by sport, year by year. And that's in this way we also can see that in the past, in the same year, an Olympic event was organized for summer and winter. And in recent organizations, we had them separate. Now it's time for our final demo, and that's a demo with bubble charts. It was one of the things when PowerView first came out that we really enjoyed playing around with, so I couldn't help but adding it to the demo. We have medals again, medals country. And I'm going to have the state count, the medal count, the sport. Okay. And now we can change this to a scatter chart. And we get something like this. I don't know what it means, not that much value to me, but if we add something very simple, we add the event as size, then we get this. Now we're starting to get somewhere. Now we're getting to a visualization that we can use. But this chart is created with the sum of all the Olympic Games. And just like in the previous demos, I want to see it year by year. In the scatter chart, there is the option of play axis. And if you have a time column, like year, you can drag it to your play axis. And you can click somewhere and see the values for that selected year. But it's even cooler to just push play. And then we see the evolution of countries winning the medals and the number of medals that were handed out over time. Pretty nice. And it's also possible if you just click one element to see the evolution over time by this line. And if there isn't any line, it means your timeline is broken. And that's not abnormal because we have a difference between the winter and the summer games when we look at recent history. So maybe we have to say only for the summer. And we don't get those erratic jumps anymore. We get a more fluent line, and if we click aquatics now, you get a line all up to the end. And that's it for the demos about PowerView. I hope it was interesting and you learned some tips and tricks. If you have some questions, you can ask them in the chat, and otherwise you can send them afterwards to the email address of Kohera. We hope to see you again in the next webinar if you have no more questions. There's somebody? No. Don't. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. How to add a picture to a card? Let me go back to the demo. Okay. Of course, we had in my model, I had pictures present. So I had in my disciplines, I had the discipline image already provided. And also with the flag here at the hosts, I already had a flag URL provided. And if you have a URL pointing to a picture online, you can use it just like that. I hope that's an answer to your question. And you can just drag it on there like any other field. Yeah, Power View, there was an add-in for Excel 2010 at a certain time, but I don't know if they revoked it afterwards, or it was probably only possible if you're working with SharePoint. Otherwise, I don't think you could use it. So it's, yeah, 2013 and SharePoint availability. See a couple of people typing. Okay. I don't think there are any more questions, so hope to see you next time for our next demo. Probably about Power Map or Power Pivot, which still have to look at it. And when we fix a date, you will certainly hear from us. Goodbye, and thank you for watching our Power BI Family webinar.